This episode is brought to you by our sponsor, Eldorado Gaming. Eldorado Gaming is your site for gifts and gaming accessories like dice, playmats, and other items to bling out your games. Use the promo code META for 10% off your order. Find us on YouTube at Eldorado Gaming TX or our home site at eldoradogaming.com. Here at My Mythical Meta, we talk about gaming with friends and strangers, resolving conflicts, and keeping game nights fun, interesting, and recurring. Our game of choice is Magic the Gathering, but our hope is that what we share is relevant for board gamers, RPG groups, video gamers, and maybe even your poker night. I'm Travis, and with my brother Benjamin and my friends Derek and Randy, we've been playing Magic together since 2014. The secret to a healthy meta is not in the game you play, it's being good friends. Subscribe to My Mythical Meta, presented by Eldorado Gaming, wherever you get your podcasts. Welcome back to My Mythical Meta, episode 20! We have reached a milestone. My name is Travis, and I'm joined this week by the entire Mythical Meta crew. All 4 Metapods united to harden.
Does that mean we're a Butterfree now?
I don't know. Metapod doesn't, join to combine Pokemon. They're not like Magnemites or Diglets.
What if they were?
Well, what about Metabots?
That's true too. I am joined by my brother Benjamin.
Hello.
My 2 best friends, Derek.
Hey.
And back from the dead, Randy.
Yay.
Howdy.
Don't call it a comeback!
I want you to put me raising up like a Frankenstein, kind of like.
Randy is back on the pod. Randy, where have you been?
Been busy packing up old apartment, getting moved over. That and my birthday. I turned 33.
Ooh.
So I've just been busy.
Happy birthday.
33 on the 3rd? It's
Yep.
like you had a second golden birthday.
I guess so.
Because your first golden birthday would have been when you were 3 years old.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I just missed it.
Boring.
I just went double platinum is what it is.
Well, welcome back. We are so glad to have you back on the pod. We even have listeners commenting saying, when is the whole pod going to be back together again? So we're glad you're here.
Yeah.
I'm glad to be back.
You know what's funny, Travis? Whenever you say, I'm joined by my 2 best friends, Derek, and then you stop, it makes it sound like Derek is your 2 best friends.
Well, yeah.
Yeah, it's a fat joke. Did no one else get that?
Hey, Derek, you lost a lot of weight, man. So
That's right,
you're,
yeah.
Yeah.
You're 1.2.
Anybody calling Derek fat, man, he lost, 60 pounds?
Nice. Wow.
60 pounds, yeah.
Doing
It's the
keto.
pickleball, right? Oh, keto. It's not the pickleball?
Probably both.
It's
The pickleball probably didn't
keto.
hurt. And
Yeah,
the
it didn't
biking
hurt.
10 miles, wasn't that something you did?
Oh, well, yeah.
Yeah, I started getting up to 15, 20
Yeah.
miles.
Wow.
Nice.
And then my old joints were like, please.
Have to stop. Well, guys, it is so great to have you guys back. And Randy, we're especially glad to have you back because you, as our resident Dungeons & Dragons game master for our main group with the Kristens, this week's episode is about game mastering. So we're going to need your insights this week.
I'll try.
We've been inspired by a lot of what's going on Reddit and a lot of course, our own expertise. And we've been kind of swinging back towards role-playing a little bit, running a mage session, talking about Martian Colony.
Yeah.
And there just seems to be a streak of topics, too many for us to really go over here as news from the Warfront. But just things going on in people's lives and people's gaming groups where DMs, GMs, storytellers, whatever a game calls it, they need advice. They need help keeping the group dynamics straight. They need help just knowing how to run campaigns, how to get their groups engaged. And so we decided, hey, we know about these things. Why don't we talk about them?
That's exactly right. We're going to talk today about the game master as a leadership position.
Yes.
I, for many years, led trainings on professional learning communities about the role of team leaders, and Benjamin has done the same. He's literally taught high school courses about leadership.
Yep.
I took classes about leadership as part of my communications major. There are some tried and true leadership methods that we think align closely with a game master's goals and what they want a healthy and a fun group to look like. That's what we're going to be talking about today.
Cool. And I'm excited. I've been inspired lately by a very famous dungeon master, Brennan Lee Mulligan.
I
don't know if any
Brennan Lee Mulligan. He is so funny.
Oh yeah, he's great.
I've been watching Game Changer TikToks.
Yeah. Yes.
And Brennan is so good on that show. Just a master improviser.
He really should win every show. Every time they give it to somebody else, I'm always like, come on. But
I think they just do that because
it annoys him and it's funny.
that's half of it.
and it wouldn't be fun. No one would keep coming back if he was undefeated.
Right.
Yeah, I loved him on he did a show called Actually for a while as well.
Yes.
And if he said something that was technically a correction, but they didn't give it to him because it wasn't the one they were looking for, he would always just point at the camera and go, "Get in the comments, show that I'm right.
Oh my god, that's so
Request
funny.
that I get the point."
So he does Dimension 20, and they were doing a show called Mentopolis, or it's a campaign he's running that takes place inside someone's brain, and all of the players were different functions of the brain. And so it was like this, like the brain was a city.
Oh wow.
Yeah, it's a really interesting concept, and Hank Green is on there
Okay, yeah.
as one of the characters.
Oh.
And
Yeah.
I went and listened to Hank Green talk about prepping for Mentopolis, and that got me on this rabbit trail of all these, so many videos of famous DMs talking about their experiences and what they do to prep and all of that, and listening to how Brennan helped Hank prepare for the games and stuff like that. It was just really fascinating and really got me into, hey, we should do a show about this, because you know, we have someone like Randy who could be Brennan Lee Mulligan in another
You
life.
flatter me. If I didn't have a full-time job.
Right, exactly.
Not in this life.
So
No, I agree. Like, we've talked about how Dungeons & Dragons in particular has been growing as a hobby, obviously because of games like Baldur's Gate, but also because of a lot of online entertainment like Critical Role, Vox Machina.
Dimension 20.
Stranger Things.
Yeah, Stranger
that's
Things.
true, Stranger Things, yeah.
So a lot of people get in expecting Dungeons and Dragons to be like what they've seen from these professional actors and professional content creators. And I do
Yeah.
want to say that that is a lofty expectation to meet. Much more often, and this is what D&D has always been for me, is just a time to tell stories and create stories with friends. It started when I was in the Boy Scouts, and it was something we did during long car drives and campouts. So each session, each campaign we did might only last 2 or 3 sessions, because by the
Yeah.
end of the campout, it was over. And then the next campout would come the next month, and somebody else would say, you know, it's my 3 sessions this time. I'm going to run something, make a level 3 character or whatever. And then in the time between that last campout we just ended and the next one, people would be talking about their character ideas. I've got this cool idea for a character. Here's his backstory. And then on the camping trip is when we would have our 2 or 3 sessions with those characters again. And it was kind of this interesting gameplay loop for us, which I think has contributed to me now just being like, okay, I'm tired of this character after 3 sessions. I'm ready for a new one. Because that's what it was like when I was in Boy Scouts.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. If you expect your friends and if you expect your game master to be professional voice actors and people who are being paid for content creation, you might be disappointed.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's like going to the YMCA to do like a pickup game of basketball and expecting Michael Jordan to be there.
Yeah,
It's
exactly. I mean, we would play around the campfire, and that's kind of what I hope our listeners are looking to expect, is this is just a really fun way to hang out with friends. And yes, you can create epic moments like Vox Machina or other professionals. You can do that.
Absolutely.
If you go in expecting it to be like that the first time with no trial and error, it is a lofty goal to meet the first time. Being good at anything takes practice. And hopefully some of the advice we give today can lead some game masters on that path to becoming a better one.
Yeah. And before we really dive into things the GM can do to make their game better for their players and everything, I really, really want to stress to the players who are listening and to the GMs to tell their players, it is not only the GM's job to make the experience good. You don't sit down in a pod to play Magic and look at the other 3 players and say, the first person to play Soul Ring gets to police the group, right?
Yeah.
I get to cut up, try to make other people not have fun because it's not my job, it's their job. They're controlling this game. No. Same thing with Catan, right? You don't look at one player and say, you're the rule enforcer. You all enforce the rules. You all play fair.
Yeah.
You all try to make the game a fun experience. You know, you all bring a snack, not just mooch off one player. You know, any sort of role-playing game is going to be the same. The roles are divided a little bit more, but it's everyone's responsibility to make sure that people are being kind to one another, that people are there to collaborate and have fun and build the experience that the group wants to have. The GM has been given additional responsibility, and therefore it feels like they're a lot more in control, but they cannot do it without their players' buy-in.
Yeah.
So we will talk about getting that buy-in as part of today's episode, but if you're a player and you see your game master struggling to corral one of your fellow players, or God forbid you, like, stop, buy in, realize that they are trying to do something for you and help them, right? Tell the person sitting next to you to knock it off. Or in game, if you're playing a paladin and someone's off stealing and that's derailing the game, throw them in jail. Right? Like,
yeah, have there be consequences for the things they're doing in the game.
Or don't bail them out of jail when they get arrested by the guards. Be like,
Right.
well, you know, we're going to go catch the goblins and get our bounty. We'll bail you out afterwards or something, right?
Yeah.
Help the GM accomplish their goals because their goals are really for you. So we're not going to talk about how to be good players today. I don't think we're mainly focused on what the game master is doing, but I do want to really stress that you cannot have a collaborative storytelling session unless there's collaboration.
This reminds me, one of the YouTubers that I follow is Doug. He's a programmer and he's a video game streamer on Twitch. But in almost all of his videos, he has his Twitch chat doing stuff. So for example, he'll create, a mod for Skyrim that says every time a Twitch chatter redeems this points reward, 10 wheels of cheese will spawn, or things like that. And so the Twitch chat really gets involved and is kind of making his content with him. And this was just recently, maybe in the last month, there was a stream where the Twitch chat, just all of the people in chat are saying, your content depends on us. Twitch strike. And his Twitch chat was just entirely silent. And he's like, guys, I really need you. This is not going to work if you don't participate.
Oh my God. Were they mad at him? Or
Well,
just...
it was something like, what was it? He had activated for a very short time a points reward that just made a fart sound and then deactivated it. And the Twitch chat was like, we want our fart sound reward back. so they revolted and went on strike until he opened the floodgates.
Brought it back. That's hilarious.
Yeah.
Let's let that be a lesson. If you seize the means of production, they will cave.
Exactly.
Been saying it since the beginning.
You have. That's exactly right.
Together, ape strong.
Yeah. So the GM does take on some additional responsibilities and work. Things like creation of a setting, creation of non-player characters, planning. Certainly a measure of improv that I think is a little harder than what a player's responsibilities are. Like, yes, players are improving as they go too, but I think the DM has a special layer of responsibility.
I mean, they got to roleplay every character in the world.
Yeah.
Right.
And come up with a backstory for them if it's required.
I mean, you even got to kind of roleplay the world in some sense because you have to describe everything. Otherwise, you're just talking in a void.
Yeah, and so in return, we grant the game master a measure of authority. They've done this work, they've done this extra planning, and so we grant them power. The philosopher Hobbes talked about this, and he called it a social contract. If somebody is doing work, they should be granted authority in order to see that work through. Benjamin, you brought this up in our pre-show discussion. Is there anything you want to add to that?
Yeah, just kind of some clarity, right? Hobbes talked about the social contract in the sense of we need to avoid the chaos that exists when there are no rules and no governing authorities in the world, right? When we're in a state of nature, we all fight each other. It's nasty, cruel, brutish. Life is short.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, that's Hobbes.
Yeah, and so we create this authority figure to bring order. And that's kind of what the GM does, right? We could all sit down and say, all right, the four of us are going to play a game. You play a paladin, I'll be a cleric, you be a rogue, you be a wizard. Let's go on an adventure. And then we could just make stuff up. But at that point, we're playing pretend. It's like a game of Calvin Ball, where at any time, if I don't like what's going on, I just make up a new rule, and who's going to stop me? Right? Y'all could all stop me, and at which point we're just having a battle with no rules. It becomes a meaningless experience, right? We need to switch games to something where there's an outside rule book. And when you establish, okay, wait, this isn't working. We're not actually playing a game. We're just making stuff up and yelling at each other. You pick one person to say, you're going to enforce the rules. You're going to create the world that we act in. You're going to provide the outside stimuli. And by doing that, you've created the sovereign. Like Hobbes imagined, you've brought order to the chaos and created a structure that the players can actually have a rewarding experience in. Just like the sovereign, the government in Hobbes' world, creates a society that we can function in together. And so not only do we live in a society, but we play in a society, and the GM is the Leviathan that brings it all together and makes it function. That's a huge responsibility. Like we said, they need the consent of the governed, right?
Yeah. They need the players to agree. It's everyone's job.
Right.
Yeah.
You need the social contract in place, but we need to talk about how to be a good sovereign here. And I think that's where we're going, is that this isn't just in gaming. I think you were going to talk about other places where a leader is required to bring order.
Yeah, so I wanted to ask the three of you guys, what are qualities that you admire in a leader?
Well, as someone who's hypercritical of leadership, the things I like to see the most is a lead from the front type of mindset, where they are kind of on the front lines, where they don't lose sight of like what it feels like to be boots on the ground. I don't know. I like someone who, when they tell me to do something, it's not something they don't want to do. It's something that they
have done.
Yeah, it's something they would do. They wouldn't tell me something to do if they wouldn't do it themselves.
Sure. Yeah.
So I always appreciate that.
I think being a good listener, where I currently work right now, I feel like my boss is really good about being open to criticism, good or bad, and wanting to know like what he can do better.
Yeah.
Willingness to take criticism if it's needed.
He's open to like getting our opinion on stuff. And when I worked at the school district, like they would be, air quotes, testing some new like Chromebooks. And they would like pass them around to us, and the techs would look at them, and they would like, which one do y'all think would be the best for the students, easiest for y'all to work on and repair? And we're like, option A. We want option A. And they're like, well, we kind of already have a relationship with option C, which is the worst one, the one that none of us wanted. Yeah. It's Dell, by the way.
Dell, not a sponsor.
No one's surprised.
It was Dell Chromebooks, and we hated these things. And there was just another one that we were like, this is nice and same price, no glass, so we don't get shards of glass on our fingers whenever they break the screens.
Because they do.
Anyway, so they would they would ask us our opinion, and it was for nothing.
Yeah.
They did not care what we had to say because they already had their deal worked out properly.
They're just trying to present the illusion that you have a say when really
of choice.
You had no say at all, and it didn't.
Yeah.
matter.
So I really hated that about that job, and I feel like here, like I asked my boss, I was like, hey, there's this certain laptop. We use Dell here at this other place too, but I mean, that's because they're really good like business machines.
Sure.
But I asked him, I was like, hey, I want to test out this other laptop. Is that cool with you? And he's like, fine. And we ordered it, and it came in, and I'm the only one in the company that has a different laptop. But, like, I wanted to test it because it's like
special.
I know, it feels nice. But it was just a really cool laptop, and I was like, I think this would be so much easier for us. It's a very modular device. Like, everything in it can be swapped out. So the fact that he listened and was like, yeah, sure. He pre-ordered it, and then, it was like $1,800. I was like, wow, that's nice to be listened to, and actually,
Is this what it feels like?
Yeah, like, this company definitely makes you feel like you matter.
You're appreciated.
Yeah. I think it's pretty similar. I like a leader who's understanding. I had my appraiser, which is in education, the person who comes in and watches and makes sure you're doing the right things and stuff. They came and observed me on Monday, and they came into a class that was a little rowdy, and the kids just can't help themselves. Like, they saw the appraiser come in, and they like me, so they try to be good, but then they slowly just went back to being bad again.
Yep. Oh, I remember those classes.
Yeah. I did some techniques to keep them on task. It kind of worked, kind of didn't. When the appraiser left, I was very, very frustrated. And I told them, like, bless their hearts. They were like, we were so good for you. And I was like, no. They were like, I was quiet. And the people next to them were like, no, you weren't. You literally talked right next to him.
Yeah.
Anyways, so afterwards, on Tuesday, so yesterday, I saw my appraiser in the hallway, and he was like, hey, great job yesterday. I see you're using a lot of these techniques that we talked about, all this stuff. You're doing a great job. And I was like, I'm really sorry about how the kids acted while you were in there. And he said, nah, it's, they're kids. I get it. No problem. I see that you're working really hard. I know that you're really teaching them some good stuff. I think that you're doing a great job. And the fact that he understood that, of course, you're not going to expect, a bunch of sophomores to be on task 100% of the time.
Yeah.
That made a difference. That there are appraisers out there who maybe expect something different. And so having that sort of understanding of your situation and seeing the good in what you're doing and not hypercritical of the places where you maybe are behind. Now, that doesn't mean he didn't offer me feedback to fix, but it was a compliment sandwich, right? Mm-hmm. He did what we've been talking about. He said what was good about what I was doing, mentioned a couple ways I could improve, and then followed up with more good of what I've been doing. I felt understood. I felt cared about. And so I really respect my appraiser. So if you happen to be listening, appraiser, great job. You're a wonderful leader.
That kind of leads me into the same thing. I was thinking about one of my old appraisers too, one of my old mentors. Something that I have really respected from past leaders is a leader who is knowledgeable, a leader who knows their material, and that the reason they would give a certain piece of feedback or a certain piece of advice is because it's based on proven techniques, or it's based on past data, or based on research. And that's me coming from the education field. I just remember, I think I was a first and second year teacher, and I had 2 different appraisers those 2 years. But those years were so formative for me, and I had such great appraisers who would come in, they would compliment sandwich me. They would say, you're doing a great job for your first year. I really like these things you have. And then they would offer a piece of feedback. They would offer a technique. And I would just think, duh, like, of course I should have been doing that. That is such an easier thing than what I've been doing. Or, of course, that would be such an easy way to check for understanding. Why haven't I been doing that? And so I really appreciate a knowledgeable leader, somebody who knows what they're talking about backwards and forwards. Or if they don't, they will look it up for me.
Yeah.
Or they'll be willing to find or search out the answer that I need. And the second thing that I really respect in a leader is integrity, but really I want that to be interpreted as fairness. Somebody who's fair, who applies the rules fairly, who applies the expectations fairly. I really respected that from my leaders in the past too.
All right. Well, I feel like the things we talked about all apply to good game masters.
The things you just heard, somebody who's receptive, somebody who's a good listener, someone who leads from the front, somebody who is willing to test out ideas, someone who is good with people and has confidence and is understanding. All of those are things that we want from a good leader. Game masters should try to do those things. They should apply rules fairly. They should incorporate the ideas of players. They should be willing to improvise. Having confidence and courage. Those are good things in a game master.
Yeah.
And this week, our news from the Warfront comes early. This is a Reddit post from our D&D, and it's called Our DM is Fantastic. This is not a post about a problem. This is a post praising their DM, and I wanted to read it out. We often use Reddit as our source of problems, but this one was so wholesome, happy, and I wanted to put this good energy out there for other DMs. It says, "Good afternoon. I typically just lurk on Reddit, and I know that so many table disputes are common on Reddit because typically people with no issues have no reason to post about their games. But I wanted to change that and make a quick post about mine. Our D&D 5th edition session started in January 2021 and is currently still growing strong. We have 5 players with great characters and our S+ tier DM. We play about once a month, and really I just wanted to say that I absolutely love our game. I see a lot of posts complaining about DMs doing lame stuff, but our DM is super approachable and wants to see us succeed without holding our hands, and it feels great. It's always felt like we're telling a story together instead of working against each other. If any of us ever have character problems or suggestions, he always hears us out and works with us to make our characters the best they can be, both narratively and mechanically. That's really it. I don't expect this post to blow up or anything. I just really love our game and everything about it, so I wanted to throw some positivity into the ether. And I just thought it was so cool that we were planning an episode about dungeon mastering and about the qualities of a good DM, and this post was posted only one day ago on December 5th, and we're recording on the 6th. So it feels timely, and I thought it was a great post of someone praising the good qualities of their DM.
You know, when going through the post, to me, the word that stuck out the most, approachable. And I feel like that is so key to being a good DM, leader of any kind of game, whatever you're doing, is being approachable. And I usually try, like, after the session, ask y'all for feedback. You know, what was good? What did y'all not like? You know, so I definitely always want approach me after the game about good or bad. Approach me in between sessions if you want about things you want your character to be working towards for the next session. You know, so I know, like, okay, this is where they're wanting to go. I can kind of plan a little bit for that and get that path started. You know, so I always say, like, you know, any ideas you have, come to me. I may not be able to use them all.
Yeah.
But...
Or use them all immediately.
Yeah. I mean, I can't tell you how many folders I have of just, like, plot hook ideas, story settings, how I'm going to link things from one to the next.
This kind of leads us into what we really wanted to talk about, which is you talked about being approachable. And really, when we talked about the DM having extra authority, it comes in the form of managing the group.
Yeah.
And person and people management is really what separates a game master apart from, say, the host of another game night, right? Like, if we play our next game at Randy's or Derek's house, we don't expect them to exert any special authority other than get out of my house.
Whenever it's time to leave, yeah.
Whenever it's time to leave, or if we do something incredibly offensive, which we won't.
I won't.
Right.
You?
I don't plan to, but...
Doesn't sound like it's not off the table, though.
Yeah, let's not remove anything off the table yet.
We haven't been to Randy's house yet.
That's right, exactly. You never know. His cat might be terrible. I've never met it.
How dare you?
Anyways, so player management, people management, what can we do about that? I think the important thing here is a lot of what we've talked about is work settings.
Yeah.
And a lot of what we talked about in prior episodes has been about managing people at work or doing things like that. But unlike work, your players are all volunteers and you can't hold money over their head or promotions or anything like that. And the goal here isn't about achieving a purpose, it's about having fun, especially in a role-playing game where you win or lose together. The stakes are just, what's the phrase? The friends you made along the way.
The true treasure.
Yeah, the true treasure is the friends you made along the way, right? It ultimately doesn't matter if you get 1 gold or 50 gold or 50,000 gold. It matters if you had fun getting there.
Yeah, in this imaginary game.
Right.
It doesn't matter if
exactly.
you got 50,000 imaginary gold if getting it wasn't fun.
Yeah, there's no championship. I don't know. Is there competitive D&D? Surely not.
Oh, I'm surely there is.
I think there is
the D&D Adventurers
like,
League something?
Yeah, I've heard of things where you have like 15 DMs all running like different groups, but they're all like in the same world and they're kind of like competing against each other to either complete tasks or to clear a dungeon faster or something like that.
That almost feels...
Yeah,
well, anyways.
We're not here to judge other people's fun.
That's right. That's right. It just seems
we're not going to yuck their yum, Benjamin.
Well, I was more thinking like the DMs are not... Like, they're all on the same team, right? The players are playing against them, or what? I was just trying to figure out how that would work, because if the DMs are against each other, they can legally cheat. Like, that's the DM's power. Like, oh, your Chimera was a level 1 with a broken wing. Guess you win. Like, oops.
I mean, I guess they would have the same modules, or the same number of creatures.
Yeah.
With the same stats, or whatever.
Yeah. Or they could be like, look behind that door over there. I don't know. Anyways, Okay, for the most part, there's not competitive D&D, and it's not meant to be played that way.
Yeah.
But if people have found a variant that they like that's competitive, good for them. I wish them the best. And maybe I'll try it sometime because I'm a competitive guy. But for the most part, when you're getting together at people's houses or in a store or wherever or online, even if you're paying someone to DM, the goal isn't competitiveness, or it may be competitiveness against the world that's been created, but not against each other. The stakes are the fun, right? The fun is what's at stake. And so what brings the groups together isn't a shared purpose yet, right? That's part of what you come together to find out. What are we doing here? What's our shared purpose? And that's one of the main responsibilities of a game master, I feel like, is to create that purpose for the players to buy into. I was just going to ask Randy, what do you think unites a group of gamers, especially RPG gamers?
I mean, I would say like interest in the setting or just already being friends. Camaraderie was what I was supposed to say.
Well, no, you said it. You said spending time with friends.
Spending time with friends.
Okay. Yeah, sorry, I wasn't following the outline.
No, it's okay.
Randy's
yeah,
like,
just,
what's the answer? What's the correct answer?
Yeah.
God,
Oh, I thought he was
No,
just asking me,
I
but
feel
I was like, oh, I don't know.
I feel like you're a good game master. I've heard so many things about your level. I figure you probably have thought about, how do I make this a good experience for my players? And I've heard some amazing things that you've done about, giving spotlight to different players and creating good worlds and stuff. And I was just wondering, what your insight was on why are your players there to play? What's something that unites them, even if they're, antagonistic towards each other in game, even if they have different goals in game. Somebody might be trying to restore a lost dynasty while someone else just wants a lot of gold, and someone else is just trying to be an agent of chaos. How do you get them on the same page playing the same adventure and to all feel invested in it?
Yeah, that's tough sometimes. I feel like knowing the players longer helps. Like I felt like when I was doing our last game with me, Travis, Derek, and the Kristens, I know Derek wants big monster on monster violence. He wants combat.
I'm a simple man, simple player.
Yeah.
So, whenever I was doing his spotlight was, oh, you find a giant mech, aka in game, it was like a golem, it was like a giant mechanical golem, and y'all had found the power core for it earlier, but didn't know what it was. Ooh. And then later on when it came time, it was like, oh, there's like a center console and it has like a bowl kind of shape, and you're like, oh, the orb. And y'all powered that thing up and you went and fought a giant bone golem monster. So it was golem versus golem kind of stuff. And I was like, that's Derek's forte. So he got to be kind of like the Red Ranger, like leading that attack.
Please, the Green Ranger, the cool one.
The Red Ranger, I think, was the head of the team for the longest time until
but
Tommy came along.
The green one was the bad boy, played by his own rules.
And he had his own solo full Megazord.
And he had a flute. So
a dagger flute.
The jazz flute. That's how you know he's a real standout. He doesn't conform to others.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Way to challenge preconceived notions.
Exactly.
It was pretty easy for me to, I feel like I write for that. I feel like before that, Travis had a good standout of kind of like a lot of stuff was dealing with his character's family in the first several sessions. So knowing them makes it where I can really tailor stuff better to them. My work group is a little bit harder, but I haven't known them as long, and they're doing much goofier. Their character goals are goofier. One guy just wants to find the best piece of cake in all the land.
Oh my gosh, that's awesome.
So I'm like, I gotta weave in this story something about him finding
He's
cake
a
every now and
hunter,
then.
Randy.
Yes, gourmet hunter. There we go. Okay, that's actually not a bad way to kind of weave that in. It's like, oh, this place is supposed to have the most exclusive chocolate pods, but they're guarded by a cocoa dragon.
So each individual person has their own reasons for playing, and it's obviously going to make a game master better if they can accommodate what those players' reasons are. Derek likes to feel powerful. Even if it's not a giant monster, the act of destruction and wanton violence is something that's fun for Derek. We've talked about the golem monster. We've talked about Derek's orc wrestler who just suplexes everything in sight.
And that's how we killed the bone golem.
Oh my god, you're totally right. I had forgotten that the finishing blow on that bone golem was also a suplex.
Consistent.
Yeah, there are other reasons for gaming too. For some, it's about escapism into another world. And that's what my last character in our last game, that's kind of what that character was about. His name was Gerard Traft. He was a warlock. And in my backstory, I had kind of created my own patron. I had created the enemy of this patron and created this entire interaction of secret cults. I don't know if it was in Randy's original world or not, but I created it in my own character's backstory and said, I want to play an investigator, some type of police inspector who is on the hunt for this secret cult. And that escapism, I think I had been watching Sherlock at the time. Sherlock, having been a warlock who has these abilities granted by someone who says, listen, you're on a holy quest and I can't tell you what it is. Like,
he slowly went crazy and became a bird man.
Half bird, half
he
man.
slowly went insane and became a bird-based vigilante. So, like, that type of escapism was fun for me. My wife, Kristen, it's just about the camaraderie. She has said several times, like, D&D is not her game. But she knows that me and Derek and Randy enjoy it, and she knows that we want to include her. And so, her time in game is about the fun her character has with the other characters. That fighting competition between Lorathra Dayender, her Dragonborn fighter, and Derek's Tabaxi Rogue. That was fun for Kristen because she got to experience the camaraderie of the group.
And she got to cut off my arms.
Yeah, and she
I was
won
gonna say,
that fight.
she nearly cut off his arms.
And she won that fight. Benjamin, I think, and you've said this before too, the act of being a min-maxer, trying to push characters to their limits and push a game's mechanics to their limits. I think you like to exercise your mind when playing role-playing games.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I saw you do this with your mage character. Tell us about the Reddit you found and all the spells you're finding and stuff like that.
Oh, yes. I wanted to make a character with a very specific skill set and maybe very weak in other areas. You minimize everything else that doesn't do the game plan. But then kind of the conceit of Mage, for those of you not familiar, is that the magic system is very flexible. You don't have spell slots. It's very much whatever you can conceive of reality becomes reality. There are things that you can do in that magic system that you can just make it up as long as you can justify it, right?
Right.
And so I was doing all sorts of research about, what are the limits of, based on the stats that I had available, what are the limits of things I could do. And I went and found Reddit posts and other forums. And of course, I went and excluded all the things that I could do that weren't part of my character's motivations and plans, which may have made her less powerful, but also made her very, very focused.
Yeah.
And part of why I did that, kind of going along with min-maxing, I really enjoy the challenge of min-maxing because it's not just about being powerful, but it's also about role-playing the weakness to me. I like doing both. I think handicaps are fun. I think that
Restrictions breed creativity.
Absolutely.
All extra flavor.
Yeah, I love the flavor. I love taking flaws in games when I can get extra stats out of them so that I can role-play the flaws and have to come up with a justification and a backstory. Like the way that you brought that game into existence by having us do that questionnaire first.
Yeah.
I had so much fun with the questionnaire. I wrote a book.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, I think yours was the longest one.
It helped me to be a part of that story. I think that's kind of where we're going with this eventually.
Yeah.
The collaborative storytelling is the game master's primarily responsibility, but that's what I like to do in games like this is, as you said, exercise my mind. Even the art of character creation itself is a puzzle. Like, how am I going to build something, and what kind of story can I tell with this block of stats?
Yeah.
And so, yeah, absolutely.
Once you have pinned down all of your players' motivation, that's going to help you to make sure that each session you play is fulfilling to all of your players. Like, I think something Randy does really well for our group is, like, every session has at least one combat, because he knows that Derek and I in particular, and sometimes Derek's Kristen, we want to blow something up. It's part of the escapism of the game, and it's the same reason we play video games a lot of the time, is to let out some of that wanton violence that we don't get to experience in real life. In the role-playing game, each session is going to have at least one combat session, and Randy knows that I like the role-playing sessions. The investigation, the clues, trying to solve a puzzle of some kind. And so Randy will usually put in some kind of social interaction too. I really liked the game we played, I think it was 2 sessions ago, because I can still remember almost every detail. On the bounty board, some warehouse owner had said that items were being stolen from his warehouse on the docks, and he wanted the party to investigate these thefts. That seems a pretty simple quest, and we could have solved it really simply. We do a stakeout, and then we attack whoever shows up. But Randy kind of gave us opportunities to question what was at this warehouse, what was being stolen, where were the stolen goods going. And we figured out that this warehouse owner was like a slumlord who was oppressing all the people in the neighboring, like in the surrounding district. And that the people who were stealing his goods were kids who were either fencing the goods in order to provide for their families, or who just needed these goods to survive in the first place. And that gave us the opportunity to kind of make a choice. Do we side with these kids, or do we side with the warehouse owner, satisfy his conditions, and get our bounty? What we ended up doing was kind of blackmailing the guy, because one of our party members had been a previous member of an assassin's guild. So we forged this assassin's contract on this guy, on this warehouse owner, and said that he was being watched at all times, and if he didn't get his act together in the district, his head was forfeit. And then we had him declare that the bounty was fulfilled anyway. So,
and I got a bar from him.
Yeah, that's right.
I'm a tavern owner now.
Yeah, the guy owned a lot of property. He was kind of like he owned the dock. A lot of people that worked at the dock also paid him rent. So he had like a lot of property. So it's like, well, you gotta pay me rent to then come to my place to work. So I'm gonna just garnish your wages. It was real scummy.
Yeah,
scummy
and I hope that people didn't tune out as I was telling our D&D story. That story is to demonstrate the idea that I, Derek, our wives, Randy himself, we all want different things out of gaming. But Randy, our dungeon master, makes an effort to incorporate all of those desires and try to help everyone be satisfied.
Yeah, and ultimately, y'all told a story that probably wasn't in Randy's initial plan, right? Like, you didn't plan for them to forge an assassin's contract and blackmail him into giving Derek a tavern. And
No, I mean, I knew, because I know my friends so well, I knew that they're going to be like, well, this guy's a real prick. And they were going to turn on him. I knew that was going to happen.
Because we are good people.
But you gave them the opportunity to do that.
Yeah.
You didn't force that on them, right? It was just the world they were in.
No, you're gonna blackmail this guy.
My wife, Kristen, is so funny
Yeah.
because she says whenever she's role-playing or playing video games, she says, no, it is my fantasy to be a good person. She's like, I just want to help people.
But that's the beauty of what you did. I want to bring up this thing about collaborative storytelling,
Yeah.
and you gave the perfect example of that, where there was an adventure that your campaign was led to, right, where you had this task, and it could have been very simple, and as you found more and more information, you were given the choice, because you at any point you could have been like, well, let's fulfill the task and move on, you know, there's bigger fish to fry out there somewhere. And instead, you decided to go further in this one adventure to set things right. But if you had moved on, Randy wouldn't have been like, well, y'all got to go back and deal with that warehouse owner. Like, he's still out there menacing people. Y'all would have been like, okay, well, we're in the next town over now.
Yeah.
Right? Give us a new...
Give us the next bounty on the bounty board.
Money, please.
Exactly.
So that option, that storytelling, he made a world where this adventure was there for you and you took it, or you could have done it a different way.
Yeah.
And so your in-game actions had consequences. You felt like you were the ones making the decisions. You didn't feel like he was just there to tell you what was happening, but that you were telling the story and he was greasing the wheels, so to speak. He was creating the world in which you could thrive and do your own thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that really comes down to what the DM is. In a good group, a good DM is like this deistic god that creates the world. They set the physics of the world. They even create the characters in a way because they tell you, like, hey, make a level 3 character and you're going to be in this setting. And yes, the characters create the characters, but like, you don't get to choose your parents, right? You don't get to choose your level to start off. Kind of, how God makes us. And then the DM can set the supernatural rules for the game. They lay out the terrain and all of that. And then they also guide the characters. They're like, hey, look over there. Oh, a bounty board. What's this? Right? Or whatever. Yeah. And they lay out the adventures. The politics are all kind of outside the player's control. But then the players have the free will. Their decisions matter. Their adventures are hard or challenging, and there are stakes where they can, at any time, y'all could die, or you could have your morality is going to be affected. Your relationship with the NPCs and with the world itself and the whole political system is shifted based on the decisions that you make. And all of you feel like you have agency in the story, that your actions affect the rest of the world. They affect the story and how it's going to be told later. And while there's probably an overarching story to the campaign, an ultimate big bad, an ultimate villain that's pulling strings and all of this, you feel like you're working on that overarching story in a way that's satisfying to you and not just being told what to do by a draconic dictator.
Right.
And I think that's really important for a good DM to realize that they're not there to write a book. They're there to help their players tell a story.
I really like that last part. If you want to tell your own story, if you have a plot in mind about how the story is supposed to go, then a role-playing game is not the best vehicle for it. If you have something that is so special and protective to you, and you want it to go a certain way, then don't give the reins to other people.
Right.
Write a book yourself. Do a comic book, graphic novel, write a play, whatever. There's plenty of creative ways to get your story out there. But the act of role-playing games, the tabletop role-playing game activity was never designed for that. It was designed as a collaborative storytelling experience. It's something I look forward to at conventions, because people just tell me the stories they've come up with. And that story is not written anywhere. It is just an oral tradition that they and their friends have developed. And now it's a shared experience between them that bonded them, that they can tell me about, but I might never be a part of. I'll never understand it the way that they understand it specifically.
Yeah, and they're remembering it years later.
Yeah.
And it'll be part of their story for decades.
Yeah.
Probably. I can remember stories from our childhood where we told these stories together. I can remember the different role-playing sessions, various games and characters that I've made and worlds that I've been a part of because a group told it together. Things that would not have happened if I just wrote a book myself.
Yeah. Yeah, it's really cool. I feel like we kind of just waxed poetic instead of giving some specific tips, but...
I mean, let's talk about tips for collaborative storytelling. Y'all mentioned before we started the game Dawn of Worlds. I would be really interested for our listeners to hear about how that really takes collaborative storytelling to the next level.
We've talked about this game before, briefly. It's a game called Dawn of Worlds, where the players take on the role of the gods of creation. And the players take turns going through ages, going through eons. And they take turns shaping the world and the world's history. So the first age of the game is physical characteristics of the world. And in this stage, you have, a giant sheet of paper in front of you. And in this stage, each person takes turns drawing continental land masses and drawing geological features like mountains and lakes and forests, and planting your handprints on the world. What are the land masses going to look like? And then the next age after that is the races. And the game is designed for medieval fantasy, but it could be designed for science fiction. You know, it could be designed for a spacefaring.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Maybe a Star Wars world where you're creating a planet from scratch, and you just talk about what are the main populaces on the planet or whatever.
Yeah, I imagine you could even almost set it up as like a ship. Like you're designing almost and giving like the history of like a ship that's been in space for like 1,000 years, you know, and it, you know, you I guess design it, but you can also go through just kind of like the history that ship's had. What was the purpose of the ship? I'm sure there's a lot of ways you could, you know, reskin it. But I mean, the whole module is like what, 4 pages?
Oh yeah, it's like a
Maybe
3.5 page
It's super
PDF.
short. Yeah.
So you populate the world with races, and then these races make cities, and then you start determining what these cities are good at, what do they create, what skill have they mastered, and then the final age is mostly political. That's when you start creating conflicts that are happening throughout the world. So you can create societies, religions, organizations, trading companies, thieves guilds,
Cults.
Oh yeah, my favorite is making super secret space cults or underwater eldritch Cthulhu cults. Anyway, so that's the game. Is each person in your group takes turns creating this world. And what makes it really, really special is that now, if one of those people who helped create the world, now that person is the game master, and the rest of the players, now nobody has to have read the Sword Coast Adventurer's Guide in order to know the history of Baldur's Gate.
The DM, if he's homebrewing the setting, he doesn't, or she doesn't have to write out, here's the setting, and here's the time period, and here's the political conditions going on, and here's key religions and key political parties or groups. You don't have to do all that because it's like y'all were there.
Yeah.
Y'all saw it in real time. Everyone has a shared understanding of the world and what to kind of like expect.
Yeah,
in
the world's history, its major themes, the world that we just created that we're running our game in right now. During some of my turns, I used my turns to say that parts of the world were sinking back into the ocean and that there was an inward lake that kept expanding. And so now it's part of this world's history, it's part of this world's mythos that the entire continent is sinking and that the ocean is rising.
And as the DM, that's something that I wasn't even thinking about, like when I was planning out my initial ideas for what I wanted, you know, the game to involve. And you know, because I had that, and then we went and did the world creation, and that helped me kind of help flesh it out, but also them add new stuff. And I'm like, oh man, these are great new plot hooks that I can add in, and I didn't have to stress over thinking about it. They did the work for me.
And another really cool thing is that this continent sinking story, there's probably not a lot that one single person can do about it. And if Randy wanted to, that entire storyline can just be a thing that happens in religious texts. It's a thing that has been happening over the course of thousands of years, and it's hard to track, and, you know, people believe in it or don't believe in it. It can just be a mythos part of the world.
Yeah, there's climate change deniers.
Well, I also made that hydroelectric dam that made it dry up a little bit.
Yeah. And that was another really fun part, too, is I can create things like a giant kraken monster. And then as part of the progression of the game, Derek can create 3 other monsters that kill my Kraken monster. All of these stories are part of the shared mythology of the world that everyone just knows. Because there are churches based on it, or there's a dam. This race literally built a hydroelectric dam in this medieval fantasy world.
Well, what can happen when gnome engineering and orcish
Gumption.
physical labor muscle?
I'm going to link to this PDF in the descriptions of this episode because it was something that has really been a ton of fun. And I think it's kind of changed the way that we've played medieval fantasy games for sure. Because we've done D&D and Pathfinder and Savage Worlds by playing Dawn of Worlds first. And it's been a lot of fun. Something else that I like to do, because my friend Richard did it in college, was a player questionnaire. As the game master is preparing the game, they write out a set of questions for the players that gives them an opportunity to affect what the world is like. When I was in college, my good friend Richard gave us all a questionnaire that said, you are a royalty figure from a country. And so, in your questionnaire, you're going to describe what that country's like. You're going to describe some of its norms and rituals and values. And you are going to be leading a platoon of an army from that country as like the setting of this game.
Yeah.
It was really neat to come up with a country on my own and then say, we're all coming to battle. I forget exactly what it was, but I think the overarching pharaoh of the world had just died, and the prince had to go to war against a usurper of some kind. And so we, as his fiefdom, were like summoned to war, basically.
And having been on the other side of this, you've had us fill out the player questionnaires, where even in the two sessions where it basically went, I feel like, the story beats were about how you planned them.
Mm-hmm.
I still felt like they were really geared towards us and having the buy-in and having my decisions matter, because my pregame decisions mattered.
Yeah.
Right? Where you're borrowing from, our questionnaires, you're taking into account the sort of game we want to run, because you can tell that just from what we've created in the beginning in session 0 or session -1 even.
Yeah.
Where,
Your player questionnaires are like session -1.
And for people who don't know what we're talking about, maybe we can back up a little bit. Session 0 is where all the players get together and talk about what kind of game they want to play and what kind of characters they want to play, what sort of things they don't want to experience, things like that. And especially for new game masters, I think that's very important to hear what your players want. And it goes all the way back to the very beginning of what we talked about, which is, hey, a good leader is receptive and understanding and flexible with the people they're leading. It's the same in running a game. You need to be ready to lead your players in a direction where they're going to grow and experience a good time, and not just in a direction where you want to take them that they may not be willing to follow. And so session 0 is important, and of course everybody should be listening to what their fellow players want and try to build that together. I feel like that's a thing for another time. Well, we've already had the session 0 talk. What episode was that?
Our session 0 episode is, I believe, episode 4.
Definitely go back and
Yes,
listen
right.
to episode 4 on session 0. But session -1 here is that before the session 0 ever happens, the GM, who's been tagged as the person about to lead this adventure from behind the scenes, they are going to lay out some ground rules that will hopefully take the players in a direction that will be fun for everyone. That tone is set very early with questionnaires, surveys, a description of the kind of campaign that's about to happen so that players can either buy in or offer feedback. And then the session 0 can happen with the guardrails up, so to speak.
With the bumpers on your lane.
Exactly. If you want to bowl a strike, put up the bumpers. This isn't a competitive game, it's a fun game. And you know what? Bowling a strike is fun.
Yeah.
Now, I will say, again, how to run a good campaign, there needs to be challenges, there need to be stakes, so you don't keep the bumpers up in-game. But as far as having a good time goes, there's never a reason to take down the bumpers and risk a bad time.
Yeah.
There's no benefit to that. And so starting from the very beginning, by getting the player buy-in, by having them do the questionnaires and the surveys and having them build the world and build their character with the game in mind, and then you having that back and forth with them long before the game ever starts, really sets you up for success.
Yeah, I agree.
Did y'all ever discuss the story that I think y'all had shared in the group chat about that problem player and like leaving that person in jail?
No, but I think we should.
Not on the episode, but let's do it. So here we go. News from the Warfront.
Part 2, there's so much news.
Part 2.
But good news. Well, this is bad news.
This one's bad news. About a guy whose character kept like just stealing and rabble-rousing in general. And then the player who's posting is annoyed at this and says that they had to spend their session getting this guy out of jail instead of exploring their own story.
Yes.
Is like the game master had presented a plot that was supposed to kind of highlight and spotlight one particular character. which, as we've said a couple times before, that's a great way to get a character's buy-in, to get them involved, and make everybody feel special. And if you know that your game is long-running enough where you know you'll have enough episodes in the quote-unquote season to do it, then I think it's a really good idea.
Yeah.
I was saying specifically what it was is, at their session 0, the person who had posted this story had said, like, my character is a runaway prince, which I was reminded of the story because you talked about Richard's, like, you're a prince from a country or whatever situation. So the person was like a runaway prince, and they've been going out and doing adventuring, and the story had brought them back to their hometown, basically. And he was hoping, like, okay, I can, this is my hometown. I can hopefully, do some cool stuff
do
here.
some, like, family redemption or family reunion.
Show
or
the other players
highlight the
cool things about
the culture of my city, and, be the guide, be the...
I think the other characters didn't even know that he was a runaway prince. So this was supposed to be like a big reveal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and what happened was player B, the rabble-rouser, being like, I'm chaotic neutral. Ugh.
It's what my character would do.
Yeah, it's what my character would do. Well, he did something dumb, got thrown in jail, and then they had to, like... Well, they didn't have to, but they felt like they had to get him out of jail, and then they had to go on the run.
And then they had to flee.
Yeah, and so they never got to explore the city that, his character was from, and, could have had plot hooks for them. Nope, they are on the run from the guards now. And so in the comments, a lot of people said, why did you have to rescue him? He's the one that made the mistake. Let him be in jail. It's basically timeout. Put him in timeout.
Yeah.
If he keeps doing this, stop bailing him out. And whenever he spends the entire session in jail, maybe he'll...
maybe he'll realize that that's not the type of fun that everyone else is looking to have.
Yeah.
Yeah. This is a great example of where a DM can step in and really make a difference here. If they had all those story notes planned, hey, we're going to do a big reveal, he could have made it impossible for them to do the jailbreak, right? They've whisked him away, and you can't find out where he is. Or you can't find out where he is without the prince using his princely connections.
Ooh, yeah.
And
that would have been good.
Yeah, a lot of the comments had some good ideas for how to bring them back into the city. Maybe there was like a cover-up, and the people of his town don't know that he's a runaway, and maybe they think, oh, he's been kidnapped and brainwashed by these people.
Right.
Other ways to kind of bring them back to the city and this character have another chance, but it not instantly be like, oh, you're all going to jail because you're with this troublemaker who's escaped jail last time, and y'all probably helped them. It's like, which, I mean, hopefully him and the DM can work something out, and they'll get to go back and do that for him. But just stop bailing people out. I mean, I luckily haven't had to deal with any of that from any of y'all or any other group.
Yeah.
Anyone that just, with main character syndrome. But I know there's a guy on YouTube called Crit Crab. He has a bunch of kind of stories about main character syndrome players, just ways to deal with them.
Yeah, and I think kind of tying this back into what can the GM do and what's their responsibility here, there's basically two ways to deal with this sort of, I'm just going to call it antisocial behavior, right? Because there's either pro-social or antisocial. Mm-hmm. You're either helping the group have fun or you're violating the social contract that y'all agreed with. And you can either deal with it out of game, and that's through private discussions, through, compliment sandwiches, through
compliment sandwiches, I think, I feel, and I need.
Right. Addressing the behavior and talking about I need, like you just said. There's all those things that we talk about all the time, but there's also in-game ways, right? The GM is in control of the guards. They're in control of the prison system. They're in control of the magical spells that guard prisoners. If you're running a level 5 campaign, well, just have the level 20 wizard advisor to the realm cast an impenetrable spell that your little level 5 party is not going to get around. This is a very safe and secure prison. And just move on. You can punish them in game and not necessarily consider it a punishment, right? But like, hey, following the advice that we've already given, where player actions have consequences, where the stakes matter, and you are actually affecting the world in real, tangible ways, then when they go all murder hobo on your random NPCs and ruin things, you say, well, your actions have consequences. That's what makes role-playing fun.
Sorry, that homeless person you just killed was the best friend of a retired adventurer.
Yeah.
And now they're coming for revenge. They're going John Wick on you.
Right.
Get Shrek.
That was my best friend. People keep asking if I'm back.
Are you back?
I'm guessing I'm back.
And so I think the in-game consequences are probably even more effective than the out-of-game consequences. I would try the first time it happened probably to discuss it, out of game, say, hey, I don't think that was fun for everyone. I want us to have a good gaming session. Can we talk about, like, maybe not necessarily a threat, but like, hey, you keep saying that's what your character would do, but you know what? Over there, part of your party is lawful good. And if what your character would do is steal from the local tavern, what their character would do is throw you in jail.
Mm-hmm.
So you can't have it both ways. If you want to be a part of this group, you have to put aside that excuse as a way to get around pro-social behavior. And you have to spend more time. Either the GM can go exert a lot of pressure early on in session 0 or early on in session 1 in saying, hey, you need to create a character who wouldn't ruin the story, or you need to have a motivation in this story where your character would go against their inclinations because they have a higher purpose or a higher goal, right? Like, if your character is out for revenge, they might forego their murder hoboing, even if that's a normal part of what they would normally do, in order to sneak around and not get distracted from their main goal, right? Or things like that. So you can do that early and say, hey, either play a character that makes the game fun, or find a motivation. And of course, finding the motivation is part of the GM's job as well. But you can also later on, right? That's session 0, establishing that early. But also later on, when it happens and they did what their character would do, turn to the lawful good character in your party and say, how would your character act after they just saw their adventuring partner do this? And try to push the story away from bailing them out, right? Because bailing them out just encourages that behavior.
When people are like, well, that's what my character would do. And it's like, well, that character would rot in prison probably. So that's what's going to happen.
Yeah. Or, that character's beheaded, roll up a new character.
Yeah.
It's like we can do a day by day, like we'll check in on you in jail.
Right.
We'll give you 5 minutes per 1 day of jail time. So,
or even like, oh, well, I guess we got to go on a quest to get your bail money. See,
yeah, we got to solve a problem on the bounty board. Bye. When people say it's what my character would do, I'm like, yeah, but you made that. It wasn't a video game character with a predetermined backstory. You made him or her.
Yeah, you wanted to be a little murder hobo goblin. And in the right settings, like if you want to do that, just be a villain on it.
Yeah.
Just run a villain campaign.
And I actually want to give Travis some props here on handling this well. When we were starting our mage campaign, I had made my character, min-maxed her and all that. She was a very social but very private individual and not the kind of person who would really join groups because she didn't really trust people. And I was, falling into that temptation of, well, this isn't what my character wants to do. And after the first session, now the first session went just fine. We all ended up as part of a group, but I was going into the next session or afterwards, I was just kind of stewing, being like, yeah, that's not, what can I do? And ultimately Travis was like, look, just change your character or do something so that we can have a good game.
Yeah.
And he didn't say it quite like that, but the encouragement of, your character can't derail a good experience for everybody. And I had to come up with a reason why I was not going to be against the other players. And I ultimately found that justification, right? I was like, well, I read them and realize that they're pure of heart or whatever.
Yeah.
And I trust them because I see that their manipulation scores are very low.
Well, you trust them because of their shared experience with you. They went through this harrowing experience with you at the same time.
Yep.
Trauma bonding.
Yeah, that's true. The trauma bonding. And they're just as worried about this new magical world as you are.
Right.
Yeah.
And I know they're not lying to me. We're kind of on the same page and the same team and such stuff like that. Whereas, my character had grown up in this world of don't trust anybody. It's like, well, no, now she's found some people she can trust, and she cares about this little teenager and this big strong man and all this other stuff.
And this guy, this guy who tried to protect you from a minotaur.
Yeah, exactly. And so,
Them up.
Derek, you can't just cuss for no reason.
I was telling the story.
Derek,
I bashed his brains in.
Derek, you've been too quiet this episode. What are some things that you think a good GM can do to deal with an antisocial player?
Ugh.
Sounds like Darren's being antisocial.
Derek's sitting there crossing his arms. I don't want to play.
yeah, fine then.
I don't want to play podcaster tonight.
It's not what my character would do.
I'm on my own solo arc right now.
Okay. Well, I feel like we've kind of answered the news from the Warfront here, which is, the GM has that special responsibility and that special authority to bring the players into a shared vision of what the story is going to be so that they can create that story together. When you have a problem player, you really do need to throw down the gauntlet, gently, respectfully, I statements, compliment sandwiches, etc. But let them know first ahead of time that, hey, a loner doesn't end up in a shared story. They have their own story. You can play single player RPGs.
Yeah, play a video game or find a single player RPG. They are out there.
Yeah.
Baldur's Gate.
But if you're going to play a loner, you're going to have to find motivation to be part of a team and to work together. And maybe, as part of the player questionnaire or whatever, we can work in your personal goals and the team can go with you on that.
Yeah.
I'm going alone. Of course you are. And I'm coming with you. Right.
Yeah.
And if you're a player who says it's not what my character would do, really consider what the goal of role-playing is for you and what kind of environment you want to create and whether or not you would appreciate if all of the other players also just kind of left you out and ruined your goals so that they could have a little joke for 30 seconds.
Yeah.
Like, it is fun. Joking happens. Like, Randy was talking about the game he's in where they're looking for cake. It's funny.
Yeah.
And they can all be part of it. But if he ruined, I don't know.
Well, no, if the cake seeker ruins somebody else's goal because he keeps asking, "Where's the cake?" It's not fun. Not funny.
It's not fun for the players. It's not fun for the DM, and it kind of probably gets old for you.
Yeah, I'm very thankful that he's more of like, what do you do during downtime? I travel to the next town over and look for cake. It's like, okay, that's fine.
See, that's awesome.
It's like, hey, we just arrived here. What do you want to do? Does the inn have cake? Okay, yeah. I think one time he was gone for a session he couldn't attend, and so we just said like, oh yeah, he's off in another town at a cake festival.
He's like some kind of like fantasy, like Anthony Bourdain,
Doing a travel
around
blog.
just specifically for cake.
I love it.
Yeah.
Benjamin, hit us with some words of wisdom.
Well, we've been talking about collaborative storytelling today and how the GM has that special responsibility, but honestly, the whole world is a collaborative story that we're all telling together. Each of us has a responsibility to work with each other for the well-being of everybody. And, your family, your social groups, every interaction you have is a chance to say, is this what my character would do? And choose to make a character that is pro-social, that makes the story better for everyone. I'll just leave it at that, short and sweet.
That was gorgeous. Great words of wisdom. Any final comments?
I love you guys.
Oh my God, I love you too.
We love you too.
And not just his family. Benjamin, I like you.
Whoa, back up.
That means a lot.
Yeah, it does. It
Yeah.
does. Yeah.
Derek,
no, thank you.
Randy,
I like you too.
I like you guys as friends, and I love you. Benjamin, I love you as family, and I like you as a friend.
That's beautiful. I love you too, and I like you too.
I like and love all of y'all.
Ditto.
I like
Happy
it.
late birthday, Randy.
Yeah, happy late birthday.
Thank
I
you
look
very
forward to
much.
this weekend where we are going to finally exchange our Secret Santa decks. So,
Yeah.
listeners,
2023.
if you're Magic players and you want to hear about the crazy, insane decks we made for our Secret Santa exchange, which do not follow normal deck building rules. Make sure to tune in next week.
Yeah.
Listeners, if you want in on news from the Warfront, or if you have any other questions about the pod, you can send emails directly to mymythicalmeta@eldoradogaming.com. Remember that you can also leave comments on our YouTube channel, on our Spotify, and our other podcast platforms. Don't forget to check out eldoradogaming.com and use promo code Xmas23 if you're listening to this in the holiday December season of 2023. Thank you guys so much. Have a wonderful rest of your day.
Bye.
Later.
This episode was sponsored by Eldorado Gaming. Use the promo code META for 10% off your order. Please like, comment, subscribe, and share. This episode was edited by me, Travis Konishek, and our intro and outro music is by Tyler Heath of the Oh Hellos.